what's going on, guys? Just got done with a session with Greg Lappin, our professor here. We're doing classes every single day. You'll catch me on the mats as well, depending on the day that you get here. But sessions are open between performance and recovery group and jiu-jitsu and the mats. It's really cool, man. A lot of it's coming back to me. It's good to train. It's good to build that baseline of resilience. And we had a lot of people who came here during the grand opening, got a little taste, and who are signing up, including Provo police officers, which is cool. It's always cool to see police officers in here training. Mike Force Podcast, Bert Sorin is the owner of SORINEX, a family-owned business that specializes in getting fit, building resilience, custom builds. They do a whole bunch of different builds. Really good friend of mine, somebody who puts being a father, a good husband, living that lifestyle of being resilient, being a good man, being a good human being. And he's one of my favorite people on the planet. We talk about fatherhood, we talking about hunting, we talk about a family, all the things that are important to us on this Mike Force episode. I hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you check out SORINEX Outdoors, SORINEX period. It's all in the links in the description down below. Make sure you also subscribe and hit the notification tab. A lot of you guys watch this, you don't subscribe. I want to be able to send you out the notification when the next one drops. The next podcast you should see from me is going to be on the border in Mexico, on the border with Texas. Because of all the things that are going on right now that aren't being reported in the national media, I hope to talk to a few experts on the border when I'm there in the first week of October. Appreciate all the support. Enjoy the episode. Thanks, guys. Bert Sorin's in the house, in the new house, the new Fieldcraft HQ. Thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit about your background and then how you got into SORINEX and all the things that you do.
Sure.
Here's if you don't know who Bert is, you should. The biggest thing that I've seen from you is your ability to bring people together in such a positive and impactful way. And that's a combination of being a man of God, a man of faith, being a good human being, and then also the ability to network, like being a professional.
Thank you.
And it's reflected in your business and your equipment and all the cool things. We'll talk about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which is a really cool story. But let's hear about your background and how you get out to SORINEX.
Sure, yeah. So my dad was a lifelong lifter, and when he was a little kid, he started building things. Only child. Mom worked all the time, dad worked all the time, so they basically just told him, hey, you're not allowed to leave the house or the yard. So whereas a lot of other kids were getting this social interaction, he was kind of left to his own, so he would lift weights and build stuff. Yeah. So kind of fast forward, he ends up starting this weightlifting equipment, and we didn't call it a company. It was called Sorin Equipment out of our garage in 1980 when he was a PE teacher, because he was teaching kids. He knew or felt like they needed to strength train, which was pretty far off for 1980. It was the whole little kids don't need to train, whatever. And he was teaching kids snatches, clean and jerk, stuff like that in kindergarten. Wow. Because he's like, no, they need to be able to move. And now we're seeing the opportunity there of growth and gross motor skills. So he was really on that track back then. And so the school he was working at said, hey, we need some weightlifting equipment. He's like, hey, I'm kind of building some stuff. So it was a very, very grassroots start. Never intended to be any type of big business. We didn't take on capital for the first 30 years. Wow. It was all self-funded. It was all
Was he just welding equipment together?
In his garage. Wow. Well, I had carport because rich people had garages. We had a carport. Doing that. But then he would be a PE teacher. He would get off class. He would teach the weightlifting class, a jogging class after he did bus duty, because he would sell his bus duty to the other teachers so they didn't have to do it. So he would do their bus duty for $5 a week. Wow. And so then he was just like, hey, I'm just going to hustle. Before steel shop would close, he'd take his FJ Land Cruiser, 1974 Cruiser. Oh, I got one of those. Yeah. Do you? I have one sitting in my front yard. Oh my gosh. Running 1974. What color is it? It's green. Okay. It's ranch green. It came off a ranch in Arizona. His was baby blue. Bought it for $4,400, brand new from the dealership. That's what I was brought home from the hospital. I was born on the floorboard. You have to get one of those. I know. He sold it 28 years later. He sold it for $4,500, and he was like, I made money on it. And I'm just like, I wish you still had that. You could find. I bet you could find it. I know. I want to. So I know. I've been kind of digging around trying to find it. I found the dude that he sold it to, and that guy sold it. Whatever. Yeah. But it's kind of like, that's why I learned to drive stick on the whole deal when I was a kid.
Cool,
and so like, that was my first vehicle. I mean, you know, how it rattles and everything, and how they use
it's so janky.
Oh, so janky.
It's like an army Jeep.
Yeah, we used to call it Armstrong steering because you had to have strong arms.
So cool,
you know,
man.
and but yeah, I could remember like every time coming back from hunting and fishing trips, falling asleep in the passenger seat because of that rattle and that hum and that you know. And it's just, so anyway, so yeah, so he had the cruiser. He would tie steel to the top of the cruiser. He'd run down before the steel shop would close, bring it back home, port a band, whole thing, cut apart equipment. So that's how we started.
Interesting. And 30 years of that. Before it evolved.
Well, yeah. So I mean, we started doing bigger jobs probably 8 or 9 years into it, which is, I mean, it's kind of funny, 8 or 9 years. I mean, most people don't keep up with anything for more than 3 or 5.
Yeah.
So right, 86, 87, 88, somewhere we started getting some bigger college jobs, but still it was a one-man team with 7 people in the shop.
And you're growing up in this as a child.
Yeah, so at that time, so I'm 10 years old while this is happening, and so I'm a little elementary school kid, and I watch the stress of him as he's doing this. I don't understand. I just know Daddy's stressed.
Yeah.
And I hear things about different things happening, and just Wild West, man. It was just a total freaking Wild West. Like hitmen sent out, like this wild shit.
Yeah.
So, you know, this goes on, and I learned about strength training through just being around because he had a home gym, and he had a big group of people that come over and train, and so I was always just around it and saw men doing hard things.
Was he a strong, big,
very,
strapping
very
guy?
Strong. Yeah. So I mean, he's 6'5". 6'5". Yeah, he was 230, 240 through the 80s. He got up to around 3 something for a bit, won a couple national championships powerlifting.
Wow.
Like, he deadlifted 500 pounds every year of his life for 49 straight years.
Wow.
Yeah, from 15 years old at like 160 pound body weight up until he was 60, I guess it would be 65, right at 65. And that year he had a stomach bleed from an ulcer from taking a leave because he's, you know, arthritis and everything like that. Well, he got a stomach bleed. He wasn't feeling well, and he was just like, I'm just not feeling, I'm tired. Went to the doctor. They said his hemoglobin was super low. He was bleeding out. He's bleeding internally, right? So the day of his birthday, where he usually pulls 500, he was just like, Bert, I don't think I could do it. Like this, I don't think. And he's like, I just don't have it in me. I'm like, the doctor told you not to really like do anything stressful. So he looks up on his phone, and the 461 pounds won nationals that year for that weight class. So he loaded to 462, pulled it, and I told him, I was like, well, Dad, like, a Sorin male has to pull 500 for 50 straight years. Like that just has to happen. Yeah. Because that was the 50th year.
Oh my gosh.
So I pulled it, and then I was like, are you cool if I do it? And he was like, sure. So I did it, and then I pulled a lifetime best later that day. And then so my idiot goal was I wanted a Sorin male to pull 500 for a century.
Wow. So what was your record? What was your left
My
record?
PR was 555. I hit 565 that day.
Wow.
And then the next year I did 600, and the next year I did like a 565. So I've kind of just kept it going.
Wow, man, that's impressive.
And so now I'm like, holy crap, I'm getting old. So like I got to get my son. He's only 11 now. I'm like, all right, Ezra, come on, buddy. Like I'm gonna need
Catch
you
up
here.
with
Daddy's
Daddy.
gonna need you here soon. Like
That's
this
awesome.
is a thing. So it just kind of, that culture has always been there. It's like, I hate to say it's kind of hyper masculine, like go do hard things, struggle, like in my hat, struggle well. Like life is a struggle. The key of it is to learn to struggle well.
Yeah.
Like that is what sets you apart. So the business has always been a struggle. It's always, no business, no business degrees, no business, not taking on capital, just kind of gunslinging, bootstrapping it. I got out of college after being a hammer thrower. I walked on track and field at University of South Carolina. I had a lifting background. I was a discus thrower, learned the hammer, had a pretty good career there, ended up throwing professionally for 5 years and 2 Olympic trials after that. So I was training. So training was life, right?
Yeah.
So much like yourself, like when that was your professional, gunslinger and what you do, like you train it, you understand it, you know all the ins and outs of it. So it worked really well for me in 1999 to graduate and to start working to help Dad, which was, there was still no big goal. It was just, Dad is stressed, I need to help him. So came on.
The family business.
Family business, right?
Yeah.
I'd just seen it, and it was, 20 something years old at the time, or whatever math, 19 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So, I'd seen some ups and downs and struggles and the whole thing when you're a one guy show running it, and everything happening and, bankruptcies and the whole deal. Right?
You're learning though. You're learning.
I'm learning just you get your ass kicked. That's all I learned in business. It wasn't about how to do business. It was make the customer happy, do whatever you have to do to make it work, and be more resilient than the next guy.
Yeah.
That was kind of the business lesson.
Yeah.
So I came on, but it kind of worked out well because I came into the business at the exact time that like a year or two before the industry like really started shifting towards like a functional fitness, athletic, power-based stuff. Well, that was my life. That's what I was doing. It was kind of like if you were a sniper and then all of a sudden everything went to precision rifle. You're like, hey, this worked out.
Yeah.
Like
easy transition.
Yeah, it's like, cool, this is a marketable skill. Like knowing how to power clean a lot of weight all of a sudden is a skill that, because you do it in the 80s, no one gives a shit.
Yeah. Now the entire world understands.
Yeah. And so like I'm coming into that like 5, 6, 7 years before CrossFit. And so, we're putting that spin on the ball within the market, and then things like CrossFit and just, that just kind of shifts in professional sports training. That was kind of the heyday of it, that early 2000s.
Yeah.
Just so happened I'm a 25-year-old semi-professional power athlete. So it's just, I picked a good time.
Perfect timing.
Picked a good time. So I was able to see just different things. I'm pretty gregarious by nature. And so I think I kind of infused just a different perspective and look. And also just taking all the things that Pop showed me, but then I was the guy in the ring at the time. So I think unlike every other equipment company, they didn't have a guy at the top who was literally doing it every day, trying to make an Olympic team. So like my secret weapon was I was training constantly and traveling everywhere to compete. So when I would compete, and whether I would win or lose, I was finding the best coaches. I would invite them to dinner, especially if they beat me, their guys beat me. I'd take them out to dinner, I'd feed them beers, and basically get them drunk enough to tell me how they're beating me.
Wow.
And I did that for like a decade.
Wow.
And so but then I would take that information back and I go, oh, they're doing this exercise. There's nothing that does that. And then I would invent a piece of equipment that would change the industry because, what some Hungarian guy is doing on no budget, it's a really cool exercise, but there's nothing in the American market that does it. So I had this interesting, this tapped into where the industry was going to go.
Yeah, because you're doing the thing.
Because I'm doing the thing. Because I was undersized for my event, so I was having to figure out how do I flip over every stone and overcome maybe some genetic deficiencies or developmental deficiencies or experiential, like how do I hack the system? So my goal became how do I hack the system? And later I became a Highland Games professional. Well, the average Highland Games pro top 10 guy at that time was 6'5", 287, average.
Wow.
In the top 10 guys. I was 6'3", 240.
Yeah.
That's hard to be in the top 10 when those are the average guys. So I'm like, how do I start winning? And so it was like, okay. And then we tweaked with different training modalities and building specific equipment then it just became a mission set, right?
Yeah.
It was, how do I solve these problems? And so that mindset started getting infused more into SORINEX. And so that was when some things started ramping up, taking the stuff Pop showed me. I had my finger on the pulse of that world. And then, I would say it goes to about 2008 to 10. I'd been there for 10 years, and we're struggling like every other business still, because even if you have good ideas, it doesn't do much, right?
Yeah.
And then one day I brought my staff, and I only had 7 people, and I was just frustrated, and we were starting to pop within the industry, and some different companies were copying what we were doing, or just like, and it sounds kind of like egotistical, but I knew what we were doing, or I felt what we were doing was very was different than what the rest of the industry was doing. And I was pissed because I'm like, we should be like the guys, like we should, or at least be getting a fair shake in this thing. And it's just like, I felt like, shit, you're still the guy out in the parking lot, playing when you should be in with the band, And it was like, and I told the guys, I was like, hey, let's give it the next 3 years of our lives, and let's just dive in whole head in. Don't worry about the time clock. Like, no one's going anywhere. Call your wives, call your girlfriends. Like, we're going to do this
Just commit,
ultra commit for 3 more years. And at that point, we'll either have on the track to where we think this company could be, or we'll run the son of a bitch into the ground in 2 years. But one of the two will happen. And then at least we could go get real jobs. Yeah. We'll be young. We'll know. We'll know at least, right? I just thought about it. I was like, I think I was maybe 30-ish. And I remember going, what if I'm 40 or 45 and I pussyfooted around and didn't take the shot?
Yeah.
And then at 45, you realize I wasted another 10 or 12 years before I put the foot to the gas and missed the window, missed the wave. And because it was always kind of early days, it was playing that safe play. You weren't taking on any capital. You were just slow growing it. It was a passion project. Being conservative, right? And so it was like, all right, we're gonna gas this thing up. And everyone, I was like, hey, there's 7 of us here, so if you need to get off the boat, now's the time to do it. But if you show up Monday, like, that's kind of you're on the boat, And everyone's like, let's go. I'm like, all right.
So everybody stayed in?
Everyone stayed in.
Wow.
Now.
Impressive.
Yeah. Now, not every one of those people are still here 10 or 12 years later because life is life, right?
Yeah.
But it was really cool. Those people just threw it and were like, all right. And they were all bought in. They were bought in culturally. They were a part of doing things that you could see, like, this is different, and not only different, but this is good for the industry. We're not just attempting to make money. We really feel like we're helping push this thing along. But it just took years of going, and I still, people are like, dude, you guys blew up. I go, you mean like the last 15 years of just grinding our faces off? Like, yeah, wild.
Like, people, I love that perspective of people where they think, oh man, you just blew up. Like, how'd you do? I'm like, okay, so do you have a few hours?
You have a few, right.
Let's go through it. And people, especially now, want instant gratification.
Oh.
And so they start a startup and they're like, I deserve to be where you're at. It's like, man, be willing to work. Like a decade plus.
Like a decade.
Yeah.
Like a decade.
A minimum of a decade.
Yes. And that's where that 10-year kind of rule, I didn't come up with it, but everything I was ever good at generally took about 10 years,
yes,
whether it was archery or shooting or hunting or lifting or throwing or business or it was
being a good spouse.
Yeah, all of the. I'm like at 13 years, I finally kind of not horrible at it.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, hey man, get over the 3-year plan, the 1-year plan. Like, all those are waypoints, man.
Yeah.
If you can't do 3 years standing on your freaking head, like,
that's easy. That's a drop in the bucket.
That's a drop in the bucket, right?
My gosh.
It's like, hey, we got to do a 5-click movement. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it right now.
Let's do it right now. Because if you get tired of that, like, don't even strap up your shoes, man. Like, don't even think about it anymore.
It's a long game.
It's the super long game. But everyone now thinks you have to have this like hyper growth. Yeah, great. We had hyper growth for 8 or 9 straight years.
Yeah.
By the definition. Okay, cool. Great. But that was still like 8 or 9 years of grind.
Yeah.
And that was after 10 years of grind. I mean, this is my 24th year.
And there's no moment. There's not like a pinnacle.
No.
You're not looking for the moment where you go, okay, we're done. We made it. It's like, this is a journey and a process.
You're clocking in for life. And I tell people, I don't have a job. I get paid every couple weeks for my life. Mm-hmm. That's good and that's bad. Yeah. Because that means if I'm awake, I'm on. And that's a very hard, right. You get it. You are Fieldcraft Survival.
Yeah.
Fieldcraft Survival is Mike Glover.
Yeah.
People are like, what's your exit plan? You going to sell one day? I go, I don't even know how that would work.
Yeah.
I'm so far from understanding what that means.
Yeah.
No, I'm probably just going to go back to work. Like, you can figure out those logistics.
Or you would start something else that would just create the same passion, drive, and purpose.
Correct. Yeah. And so that's what I look at. It's like the passion you have to have, in my opinion. You have to have the passion. You have to have it so ridiculously high that it creates the ability to be resilient, because it's going to take you that 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it is. And being kind of interested in it is going to go about 2 or 3.
Yep. But
like, when it's not fashionable, it's not fun anymore, all that other shit that comes with it. Now you have to be so passionate that you're 8, you're still like, no, this is rad.
Yeah.
This is great. This is, and you're like, hey, look, we got better. You're like, cool. Anyway, let's just keep going, right? And so at the 10-year points, that's where I look at. I go, most people in sport or business, I think one of the biggest things in business, and I'm not a good business person. I'm here still, basically.
Which survived.
Right, which is probably much like, and I would assume you're training the special forces. It's an attrition training.
Yeah.
The guys that are at the end get to be on the team.
Yeah. It's a long game too.
It's the long game, right? And so that's where I see is like the biggest thing for being good at anything. It probably resilience is the biggest factor. And I don't think of myself as overly resilient, but I guess the tail of the tape says I'm either stupid enough or I'm tough enough.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with either.
Yeah.
But I think part of it goes back to it's what I love, it's who I am, and you don't stop at life. So if this is what life looks like, then just keep showing up and keep swinging, and you're gonna. At a 10-year point, if most people quit in 3, that means, in my opinion, mathematically, you're going to be 3-point-something times better than most people in the industry.
Yeah.
Because you've just put in more experiential time.
Yeah. When everybody fell off.
When everybody fell off. And that's what I saw in throwing and everything else like that. It's like, hey, you do this for 10 years, you lift a bunch of weights, guess what? You'll be freaking strong. You're going to throw far. You're going to do, like, you shoot a gun or shoot a bow for this much. You're going to be just good at it.
Yeah.
Or probably go do something else by that time.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of the story of SORINEX in a nutshell to an extent. But, you know, and then things really started catching on, and then we actually started like understanding marketing and a little bit of media, and then got really a little bit of success, got us more bold to say, well, let's do the things that we always thought were wrong with the industry, and let's change it from the inside. Because you know, it's one of those, until you've had some success, no one really cares if you're doing something different.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, that's just that weirdo dancing in the parking lot. You're like, you know? But once you start having some success and they go, oh, you guys did so-and-so weight room, you guys did this other weight room, then it's like, oh, you guys must kind of know what you're talking about. And then you could kind of go, good, I'm going to shift it a little bit. I'm going to shift the party a little bit to more just frankly what I believe the industry should have been more of. And is that egotistical? I don't know. Like,
it's working.
Well, it's right. If you go to a party and everyone has a weird vibe, well, you just start being the change.
Yeah.
And then a couple people are like, hey man, Mike's really fun to hang out with.
Let's
and
hang
you're
out with this
laughing.
guy.
They're hanging out, and then everyone in the room's kind of having a good time, and it's like, cool, we changed the vibe in here.
Yeah.
But you can't do it from outside.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was, I think, what we kind of were able to do. And then, you know, in the last 6-7 years, we've been super blessed. Just like people like yourself have just believed in us and given us these super cool opportunities. You know, I pinch myself all the time. I'm like, yeah, you know, at one point we said, you know, again, not egotistically, but it was just like looking, we're like, we're kind of becoming the go-to guys for the go-to guys.
Yeah.
Like people who can afford anything but to lose. And like in 1 week we had your former place you worked, the one in the Navy, the Patriots, the Lakers,
Wow.
and Bezos.
Wow.
And I'm like, huh. So like the best of all the entities
That's really
all
cool.
called in a week.
Wow. That's really
And I'm just
impressive.
like, huh.
We must be doing something right.
This is weird. This is really strange.
How'd this happen?
Yeah, and you kind of like, you're like, oh, that was wild. That was super cool. And you're like, okay, you kind of stop everything. You go, what are we doing right now? What is so helpful and valuable? Like, let's take like a screenshot of this moment, not for posterity, but to kind of like after action it and go, what helped us get to this point? What made so-and-so believe in us? What made it, do they still believe in us after the fact? Like the after action.
But it's you. That's what it is. You know, like when I engage with you at SIG, at the SIG Hunter Games,
Yeah.
it's you, man. You have this, you know, I've been told, not to sound egotistical about it, but I've been told the same thing in a similar way. You have a certain energy. And
You certainly do, no question.
I can't remember who it was that just was saying this recently. It might have been it was a podcast. I think it was Chris Williams' podcast, and he was talking to a guy about the energy of people. And there's people who kind of suck energy away.
Sure.
And there's people who, when they walk in the room, everybody just gets energized, right? And it's either positive or negative or neutral, right?
Right.
And most of the people that I interoperate with, because it's just an association, it's neutral. But when you go and interoperate with high-level players like yourself, like Andy Stumpf,
Sure.
like Evan Hafer, there's something magical about that. But also, it's not addictive, it's compelling, because it makes you want to be around that more. it makes you more energized.
100%.
So when I'm around you, I go, man, that made me feel good. I got more energy. And then I elevate, and then my company elevates, or the people around me.
And then we play off each other, because 100%. As you elevate, I elevate, and I'm like, same thing is like, I'd seen you, on social media, whatever, but it was just weird. Like I saw you, I was like, there's Glover. I've been wanting to talk to him. And I remember the second I shook your hand, it was like this energy raised. I was like, oh, frequency. This is cool.
Yeah,
this is someone I want to spend more time with. This is really, and that's kind of what we talk about, like at SORINEX Outdoors, we call it the thin air, deep water. And the idea of it is, and again, and please, I don't want anyone to feel like this is an egotistical, it's observation.
Yeah.
Is as you go, or my experience is, I shouldn't say everyone, as I've gone through life, the more I've been successful and the more places I've found myself, the more interesting the people are higher up that mountain. And I don't mean like a socioeconomic level. It's just from an extraordinary side.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I keep running into like the same people. like you go up this mountain and you're like, man, this is freaking rad. I saw that guy like last week on a mountain. And then you're like, oh, right. There's just people that are special.
Yeah.
And it's not, is it developed? Is it just God-given? Is it just a frequency thing? Did they vibe on something that is a positive, like you're certainly one of those people, and like Evan and freaking like Jack Carr, Zach Brown, like guys like that. And you're just around them and you're just like, I want to go get life right now. But it's funny when you start kind of doing the after action, you're like, all the same people. Like there's like, and the groups of course like intermingle, but that's the thin air. And I go, oh, is it difficult to breathe that thin air up there? But the people who can are very capable. They're very interesting. Interesting. Yeah. And so that's what I kind of like go, oh, he's a thin air breather too. Like he or she, a Laura Zare, perfect example. Just a different animal. Or Brian Peters, a different animal. Animals. Yeah. And you just go, you're such an interesting creature. I want to be around you and I want to pour into your life and show value and try to help you on whatever voyage that you're in right now, because I want to be front row seats to it. I don't need credits. I just want to see you succeed. Yeah. And that's cool that you feel the same way about me. That's great. Yeah. And then, so there's the thin air side. The deep water side is to be good at anything. I fully believe you have to immerse yourself so far down the rabbit hole that you lose sight of daylight. Yeah. That you go I'm sure when you're on multiple selections, like you were half person after a while. Yeah. You were in it, right? Yeah. And again, whether it's, high level sport, lifting, blah, 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 name a million things. The John Dudleys of the world in archery. Yeah. That guy he's so far down the rabbit hole in that, or the best jiu-jitsu guys. Like they are so in that. And that's where I kind of look, I go, oh, from thin air to deep water, those are the two poles that I find super interesting in people. And usually the people that are willing to go deep water are the ones you keep finding breathe in the thin air.
Is that the concept behind Winter Strong and some of the concepts?
Yeah, to an extent. It was so Summer Strong was actually my dad's birthday. So we started as his birthday party 16 years ago. And I was like, hey, what do you want to do? He's like, hey, let's invite some guys over to lift. Let's cook. Just have some drinks and just have fun. I was like, okay, cool. We opened up the gym. 38 people or something showed up the first time.
It just worked out.
But what was really cool is something that taught me a lot. You had professional strongmen, professional Olympic weightlifters, power lifters, sandbag, all these different modalities. And they all showed up and everyone's kind of like looking at each other for a minute, like, it's kind of like a six action shooter guy and a shotgunner and a rifle guy and a carbine guy. And then one guy just started doing his thing and everyone started learning from that person. And then like an hour later, literally Josh Hinken started doing sandbags. And then all of a sudden you're watching Olympic lifters do sandbag training. Strongmen are starting to do sandbag training. And like an hour later, it just kind of shifted. One of the Olympic lifters started doing some stuff and then everyone kind of did his thing. And then later on, some strongmen were walking the yoke outside, and then everyone started trying strongman training. And then powerlifters started squatting later on. And I watched, I go, oh, bring dissimilar modalities together with a similar mindset. And back then it was more, I look at it, it was deep water people in their own things. They all could breathe the thin air, and you put them in a room and you shake the room and you step back.
Wow.
And what I watched was a beautiful symphony of no egos, because the power lifter, he wasn't trying to compete with the sandbag guy. He was trying to learn from him. He's like, I could squat 800 pounds, but you could do this crazy thing with a sandbag. Teach me how to do that.
Wow.
And so it started growing into that over the years. And then what I would notice was like, it's kind of my thought of like, military guys, although they like each other, they're not impressed with each other. I've found.
Always.
Right. Like,
at least they'll never admit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like a SEAL's never going to go, that Ranger's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that's never going to happen, right? Same thing for athletes.
Yeah.
Like a football player is like, yeah, he's all right, you know? And so I watched our strength training, but what I did notice was a world champion shot putter is really interested in this Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And this SEAL is really interested in this guy because there's no competition. They're both super extraordinary, deep water, high thin air people, and they can learn from each other.
Interesting.
So the plan was, how do you take as many disciplines from a capable, strenuous pursuits, put them together in the same room, have speakers that are transcendent in different places that take the person that's there, the person who's at Summer Strong, to different places, and you kind of craft it out almost like a movie. It has to go up, it has to go down, it's like a, we build it out almost like a symphony of like.
I was gonna say, you got to orchestrate the whole
thing. Sure. Yeah. I'm going, okay, this guy's going to be transcendent. He's going to be heart. Yeah. This guy's going to be a body guy. This guy's going to be really heady. And so we'll just move it up and down.
Yeah.
Because I've screwed up before, man. I did 3 heart guys in a row. It was like watching Schindler's List, man. Like people were just like, I can't take anymore. I'm like, okay, we got to throw a guy that's just going to work people out in the middle of that, or we're just going to have people hiding in the dumpster. It was wild. So we had some misses.
Oh, man.
So 6 years ago, a few of us were like, man, like we need to do Summer Strong more often, because it was like, becomes like a group therapy, family reunion, TED Talk. Like that's like our thing.
Because you just do it on your farm.
Well, Summer Strong we do at HQ. It's our gym. So it's 700 people. It's like like a weekend, like a whole thing, right? So a couple of like the inner circle was like, man, we need to do it again. We need to do something called, we need to do Winter Strong. And all my buddies were wanting to do the same thing as Summer Strong, just during the winter, basically so we could all get together and hang out again.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, and I didn't tell anyone. I was like, I don't like that. I want it to be different. Summer Strong needs to be Summer Strong. But then of course, I love the outdoors. I love strength training. And I started thinking about my phone. I was like, 90% of the people in my phone are either thin air, deep water people in one of 2 pursuits. They're either athletics or they're outdoors people.
Yeah.
Outdoors, and I'll throw in military into that kind of world too, right? And when I looked and realized, I go, but these 2 groups don't know each other as much as I could think they could. Yeah. Because in my opinion, if you're into sports, you probably grew up maybe urban or suburban. You grew up in a gym. You grew up on a athletic field. During the fall, you were playing football. You were doing like all those type of recreations, or you grew up in weightlifting, whatever. So you're really good at that. But most of those guys know very little about the outdoors and natural world, which I so love. And then I saw a lot of people in the outdoors world and military world strength training, and I go, they're doing it okay, but I got the world's best guys in this pile. Why don't these guys listen to those guys, and those guys learn something from these guys?
It's like a knowledge transfer.
Correct. Yeah. A dual proposition of like, hey, we want to teach you some rewilding because you've been in a football helmet your entire life and been in a gym or a basketball gym. Like, I want to teach you primitive skills and outside stuff and all these things these people just live on. And these guys, if you want to be more durable and all these other things, why not listen to a guy who's a world champion and trained 10 Olympians? Yeah. And so it's like kind of I'm going to bring my 2 friend groups together, but under the caveat is we're going to do it at my farm. Everyone's going to camp out. It's going to be an immersion event. We're going to pick the crappiest weekend of the year to do it. It's going to be February in South Carolina, which you would not think is miserable, but it is.
Oh, cold and miserable.
Cold and miserable.
It's humid.
Yeah, you remember like the Fort Bragg nonsense. It's similar, brutal. Right? Brutal. So you're going to camp out, you're going to do it, we're going to cook, we're going to do field skills, whatever, but we're also going to do strength conditioning. So it's going to be those 2 groups coming together. And as you well know, in a hunt camp, you hang out with people for 2 or 3 days, there's some real stuff that starts to happen. So that was Winter Strong 1. It was always just We kind of kept it low key. It was invite only, like, hey, let's just see how it works, because it was, you know, you have guns, you have bows, you have some beers at night. Like, that was one of those, you got to keep that one pretty tight. You can't just start, come one, come all. It's like, oh boy, you can have some weird stuff go down.
You have a derby going on.
Yeah. So that was how Winter Strong started. And I think we just did year 5 or 6, but it was super cool. I know Dee Dee came out this past year, and it was, you know, we need to have you come out.
I can't wait. I want to commit.
But that's kind of how that worked out. But that's kind of my pet dream of, now that I'm no longer trying to make a steel ball go really far from my feet, like, I have to train for something. And it's like, why wouldn't I train for the thing that takes up a lot of bandwidth in my head, which is hunting and the outdoors and stuff. So then, not that I'm the first person by any stretch of imagination to put those two together, but I think I'm one of the first people that had the level of friends in both.
Yeah. You seem like you're connected. Like, I feel like if I needed to connect with somebody, it would be you, because you're like the center of gravity for a lot of people. And those connections.
Not far off.
What does that come from? Was your dad that way? Did you grow up in a family that way?
I think I'm super attracted to extraordinaryism. Like, extraordinary people usually bring extraordinary experiences. And so if someone is resonating on this extraordinary level, it's like a drug. It's addictive, kind of like you said. It's like almost this, wow, I want to celebrate that person, but I also want to, like, learn that skill. Like, why is someone so good or so different or so... Again, Laura Zara was a perfect example. I got introduced to her 5 or 6 years ago at SHOT Show.
So different.
A friend of mine said, hey, you ought to meet this girl, Laura. I won't be out there to introduce you. Here's her number. If you're out at SHOT, you ought to hang out. I'm like, okay. Hey, I'm going to go to dinner. You want to go hang out? And then, of course, I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to dinner with this rando girl, just letting you know. And then Laura and I are like walking around, like, hey, you want to go like walk around, look around? She's like, sure. It's 50 degrees outside, you know, because SHOT could be cold.
And she's wearing Ranger panties.
She's wearing tights and a tank top. And as a gentleman, I'm like, hey, do you want to wear my jacket? She was like, no, I like being uncomfortable. And I'm like, you're different. You know? And then so we started talking and all this. And then that night I was like, I want you to speak at Summer Strong. And she's like, I don't know what that is, but okay.
Yeah. And then, she would show up.
And she showed up and she just blew the doors off of everybody. And that was like, what?
And it's not a gimmick. It's real.
No. And then, like,
she lives in a tree.
She lives in a tree. Yeah. Yeah. And then she came down to South Carolina. I was like, hey, I got to go check some hunting stands down in a swamp. She's like, okay, cool. Takes off her shoes. She's like walking around. I was like, hey, by the way, we have a lot of poisonous snakes. Probably keep an eye out. She's like, awesome. And she's in bare feet. I'm like, I'm in snake boots up to my knees, right? And then I'm like, by the way, that's all poison ivy. She's like, yeah, I know. And she's like, I love how it itches. And I'm just like, you're just different, right?
And she likes that.
She totally likes it.
She's the gal on Naked and Afraid who destroyed the men.
Destroyed them.
That Hawaii episode where that guy's like, he's like burned, and she's out eating lobster, like hunting lobster and eating lobster on the. And she's like, yeah, this is easy. Yeah,
she has like the highest personal survival rating of all time on any show.
She crushes.
Yeah, she went. So right before she went to Alaska, we were talking, and then and she called me when she got back. I was like, hey, you're alive, you're good. She's like, yeah, almost got eaten by a bear, but. She's like, the funny part is like I gained 22 pounds going into it, and I only lost like 19 or whatever. She's like, it was honestly too easy. I cried when I left because I didn't want to leave. She's like, we were making, what was it, like cranberry or raspberry compote on top of our salmon and feeding it to the camera people because we had so much food that we had made. She was like, we were literally making meals for the camera people. I was just like, you're a savage.
She is so awesome.
She is just ridiculous. Yeah. So like those are type of people. It's just like, I want to just drill in and go, I want to see how everything works. What makes you tick? Why does this tick? And then I think I have a gift for learning through people's experiences. Yeah. And that has saved me a lot of heartache because I generally don't have to make a mistake if I watch someone else make it. Yeah. And my dad is actually, he always talks because we're big hunters, and he always, one of his mentorships was, especially as we got more successful, he's like, big buck doesn't walk across the field in the middle of the day. And it's just kind of that, hey, a big buck knows he's a big buck. He didn't get big by being stupid. And once he realizes what kind of antlers he has, you're not going to see him doing dumb things in the middle of the field. They don't do dumb things. And so that's something I've always remembered in business and things like that. Like, don't go do dumb things. But watching people, I could listen to their story and go, oh, I don't have to go do that now.
Yeah,
I
I'll
know
never
how
make that
I
mistake.
know how this plays out,
Yeah.
you know. And so that's where I love talking to super interesting people, because you basically hack the system. You download everyone's data and you go, this is great. Now
It's readily available right now.
readily available,
Yeah.
right? And so so that's kind of like the Summer Strong, Winter Strong. SORINEX Outdoors is really just kind of a pet project that, you know, that's where I fell in love with Fieldcraft Survival, because you guys have done like the ethos and what you're doing was all this stuff that I was attempting to do as a kid, or my dad was teaching me, but you guys have put it in a program and you're making it available for everyone. That's, you know, Dad wasn't reading the Foxfire books and showing them all that stuff. And like we would have when I was probably 10, 12 years old, he would put a pile of gear out when I go over and stay over his house, because I was, you know, parents were divorced. I'd go over every other week, you know. And so I go there and there'd be like a pile of gear, axes, saws, like the whole of the crap, right? And he would be a scale beside it. And maybe it was how much can you fit in a bag, or how much can you take 12 pounds or 15 pounds or 10 pounds. And so then you had to start like early problem solving of, oh, I could use this for 5 things. I could only use this for 1. So I need to leave that back. That's lower priority. This is a redundancy I do need to spend weight on. And so like my early problem solving skills at 9 and 10 and 12 years old were like,
From your dad.
from my dad. Like
that's
those
so
were the
rad.
things. Or it was like, here's a number 10 can, like 10 can. Put whatever you can in that, and that's what you have to camp with.
Yeah.
And then you realize
Yeah,
like,
I
oh,
love
I could
that.
use the can as a stove. I could use the
Yeah.
can as a this and as that. And then, so a can opener is a really good thing to put in there.
Yeah.
And so you could cut, you know, and so like that was so invaluable as a kid. Like we never had video games. I've never owned a video game since the original Atari.
Wow.
And so it was always like, you come home, you're allowed to play with any guns you want. You have to confirm that they're unloaded first, and when you're done, you have to clean them. So it was like, hey, Dad, can I see the 458 Win? He's like, sure. I'd have to check it. I'd have to confirm. I could run around the house and dry fire everything I wanted, but when it was done, I had to do a full clean of it.
Wow.
So it was respect of that, and I realized like, I'm not going to go do something stupid, because I got to actually clean it afterwards.
There's consequences.
There's
yeah.
consequences, right?
Yeah.
But then that was never, guns were never like, ooh. Like
Yeah.
it was, you could play or mess with them anytime you want, as long as you ask me, but it's your ass if you don't. And so it's like, well, that's an easy one. So the answer is always yes if I ask. And if I don't ask, it's a spanking. So,
Yeah.
okay, this is really easy. So the same with my kids, I've taught them since they were 2 or 3 years old was, you know, I would test them. I would, of course, unload a gun, whatever. I'd lay it on the ground.
Same. Yeah.
And they'd walk by and I'm like, Ezra, what's that? And he's like, gun. And I was like, what do you do? He goes, tell Daddy. I go, right. And I go, and so now it's not an issue. They see guns going in and out, probably much like your kids.
Yeah.
Going into that house all the time. And it's like, it's almost an annoyance.
Yeah. Don't make it a novelty, because that's how kids get interested. They're
Yeah.
curious.
But now finally, just this year, my 11-year-old's like, Daddy, I want to learn about guns. And so I gave him a gun book. And so he went in there. He's like, do you have something that looks like a Luger? I like the way those look.
Cool.
And then so we would go, you know, I have a little gun room and we go in there and I would teach him bolt action, lever action. And I go, at that age, I knew all that, but he just wasn't interested nor ready. So I wasn't going to push it. But now he's like, well, what about this? What does this do? And so we'll go through a full thing. And he's like, now he'll ask, hey, can we go look at the guns? Yeah, sure. And so
awesome.
It's neat, because as a gun and guy, like part of me, like my heart was broken when he wasn't interested in it. And like, or my kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is what I want to do. And, you know, I had something 6 or 8 months ago, my oldest, I mean, it hurt. It was like one of the, you know, so I asked my son last fall, I said, hey buddy, you know, it was like a Sunday afternoon. I was like, hey, I'm going to probably go hunt this afternoon. You want to go? And he was like, no, I don't want to go. And I'm like, I was like, well, it ought to be pretty good. He's like, and he just looked at me and goes, Daddy, I really don't like hunting. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, I'm not trying to be mean. I don't really like guns, and like, I don't really like hunting. He's like, don't be mad. And I'm like, no, buddy, I'm inside. I'm like, you know, and I go, well, why is that, bud? And it still almost chokes me up. Still, he goes, because hunting means you leave.
So he associates that with you being gone.
He associates when he wakes up in the morning and I'm already gone.
Oh. Oh no.
Right?
Oh, that breaks my heart.
Yeah. And I go,
And I get that because most guys, when they grow up hunting, and I mean, they're in the household hunting, they're leaving the kids behind.
Sure.
And you know, it's like dangerous, liable,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. You go on an
whatever
elk
it
hunt,
is.
it's a week. Then you do this, and it's like, oh, how long are you gonna be? You're gonna be in Utah for how many days? Oh
no.
And then, you know, come home, and then maybe I'll only go to the farm and hunt 2 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm either missing dinner or I'm missing breakfast.
Yeah.
You know, and then so when he wants to play and color and be a little kid, it's, oh, just daddy's not here. He wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning, ask mommy, oh, daddy's hunting. I come back at 10 or 11 in the morning, maybe have lunch, take an hour nap or two because I've been up since 4, play with him in the afternoon, but he hears, you rather do that. Yeah.
Interesting. How do you fix that? How do you come up with a...
I had to metabolize it. I had to, first of all, hey, I understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're
But now
right.
he's of age.
You're
Just spend
right.
more time. to
You're
hunt.
right. Now, this was only 8 months ago. He just wasn't into it yet. He just kind of, it wasn't his thing. And then I asked him a little bit more, and he goes, well, I don't think we, should, kill animals, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, where's this coming from? Like,
It came from somewhere, right?
came from somewhere, had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So he was reading like these Ranger Rick magazines that were like more environmentalist versus conservationist.
Yeah.
And so it basically painted everything as everything's endangered. And I was like, I had to like unwind a lot of this, buddy. I'm like, hey, do you notice that when we eat venison, like almost every day, do you know where that comes from? Like, do you know that I see 300 plus deer a year and I shoot 3, And so we had to kind of talk it through. He's like, yeah, but so-and-so, this is in danger. I was like, no, and I had to show him the numbers. And it was weird having this conversation, but it was kind of like this conversation you kind of see happening in today's society.
Yeah.
And you almost already see like this false narrative being pushed to an 11-year-old kid whose dad is a big hunter. There's a gazillion mounted everythings around, and he's hearing, we shouldn't do this.
And you caught it on day one. Imagine 10 years
Oh my
later.
gosh, it would have been wild.
Yeah.
And then so what happened, and I know probably Scott Bull Courts from Bull Courts and Firearms.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought one of those little NV 9-inch little deals, and little 22. And so my son didn't like the recoil, and he's a little bit on the spectrum, or at least was at one point. So they have what they call the prims, the primitive reflexes. So if someone has not worked through those primitive reflexes, he's through them now.
He still has a flinch response.
Flinch response, yeah, exactly. So that was one of the tests. You could walk behind me and go, hey, buddy, I'm about to clap my hands. And he goes, okay. And you clap your hands, and he would still respond.
Yeah.
But what they said was very interesting. You very well may know this. But they said that is the foundational base of how you deal with surprises in life. So your 16 years old girlfriend breaks up with you for no reason. It triggers the same response because you didn't know it was coming. And so until you get those prims taken care of, like that's going to be a foundational building block. So anyway, we worked through some of that, but the recoil still was just like, he wasn't having it, which is really weird because we'll wrestle. And my gosh, that kid is so tough. Loves getting hit. Loves getting
my boy too. You could open hand slap my boy, and he's like, "Okay, let's go."
Exactly.
Like,
but it's wild. It's like there's something of a shotgun going off. It's like I don't want to do this anymore. Hands it back.
It's audible, sensory.
Something. So I had this little silenced 22 with a red dot on it, and I threw a bunch of ping pong balls out in the field, or first balloons. And then he started shooting those, and it was like ka-ding, 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 and all of them popped. And there was that sensory, like, ooh. He's like, Daddy, can we do that again? And then it was balloons again. Then it was ping pong balls. And then by the end of the day, he was going 10 for 10 jumping ping pong balls around this field.
Wow.
And now he calls it his gun. He's like, Daddy, can I go shoot my gun again? And I called Scott. I go, if I had to buy this gun every week, it would be worth it.
Yeah.
Right? It would be worth that because then my little 7-year-old is like, oh, well, he thinks it's cool. And so everyone just thinks it's the coolest thing in the world. It's the best thing I've ever purchased.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, now what's the next caliber uptick? We go and run a 5.56 with a can on it. And, and that it's like, okay, if I could do that, he could hunt, And so there's a couple bucks I've seen on our farm. And I'm like, hey, I'm kind of warming him up to it. I'm like, hey, would you want to kill a deer this year? And he's like, yeah, I think so.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay. All right.
We made a lot of headway in 8 months.
We made, some headway, but it was interesting. It was, couldn't figure out what was doing it. And it was literally that one where he had success. He understood it because he didn't have to even get eye relief from a scope. It was just a little, delta point, Leupold, wherever the red dot was, he got it. I didn't have to there's nothing, he could shoot at both eyes open. And that was just, I look back and go, okay, that was a godsend because it was just a very packageable thing that a little kid could use and you have success. And now we're going to ramp it up from there. But then, so now all my kids are like, I told them the other day, I was like, hey, do you want to hunt? Yeah, Daddy, what season's coming in now? What's just like, okay, now we're working on it.
Okay,
so,
that's good.
Yeah.
What are your ages of your kids?
So 7, my girl's 9, and my oldest is 11.
That's perfect, man.
So
you're in the prime of their lives right now.
Yeah, and now they're fishing. I took them catfishing earlier this week, and we caught 46 catfish in half a day.
Eating.
And so, and then they're learning to skin catfish and eat them, and then we had them last night. We did fish and grits and the whole deal.
Good.
Oh, and they were like, "This is so
fish and
good."
grits.
Yeah, it's great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got butter, cast iron pan, blackened them, and then knocked them on top of grits with onions in it. It was so good.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing. But then
Mouth-watering.
the kids are like so pumped about it. Then I was like, "Hey, remember we had a great time fishing. We got up early. We did the hard thing we didn't want to do. We went out. We were prepared. We did this. Remember how fun it was catching all the fish. Then we had to go home. I know we were tired, but we still had to hang that thing on a nail on a tree and skin it and fillet it and do all the stuff. And here's what we get. Doesn't it feel good?" And because my two boys and my cousin's boy, they caught all the fish. So none of the dads did. We just sat back and let them do it.
Oh, so cool.
So I was like, you guys did this. You supplied the family with this awesome food, and we get to do this more often. And so, but it's not void of work.
Yeah, you're connecting the dots for them, and then they're like, oh, this is a good process.
This is great. And their favorite food is deer tenderloin. And so they call it lean steak because my son hates fat. So he loves it how lean it is. And he's like, Daddy, we get more lean steak? I go, I got to go hunting. Like, you got to go hunting. Someone has to go hunting. We just don't get that.
Yeah.
And so now he's like, okay, I kind of get this.
Oh, that's cool.
This is a part of the process now. So
that was stuff he was reading?
Yeah, it was weird. So we got him, like they said, the Ranger Rick books, but I think they have a kind of a heavy, I hate to say liberal slant.
Yeah.
And more environmentalist versus conservationist. So it was like, we can't kill any animals. Too many animals are being killed or killed for their ivory and all this other stuff. And like, yeah, okay, the wild hogs aren't being killed for their, like let's be realistic about these situations here.
Some good Tinder.
Yeah.
Tinder reading material.
Yeah.
Just throw that in the fire.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, we're not going to get that one anymore. So how about some of those gun magazines and gun books? And so we're actually reading like Archibald Rutledge, which is he was a poet laureate from the late 1800s in South Carolina that he grew up on this farm down in South Carolina and like wrote one of my favorite books he wrote called The Woods and the Wild Things I Remember. And he's recounting his life on a southern, basically a plantation growing up and like all the crazy stuff that like kind of, Mark Twain-ish.
Yeah, growing up in the South, that's that life.
Yeah, that life.
Yeah.
And it's neat because like he's literally, less than 100 miles from where we are. So like the similar swamps and the same kind of
cane poles.
And so the kids, I read them that every night before we go to bed. Now they're kind of pumped up like, will I ever get to see an alligator? And I'm like, well, Daddy just got an alligator tag. You want to go alligator hunting? And they're like, ooh, like this is an
Somebody
adventure.
just asked me to go alligator hunting in Florida.
You ever
Which I've
been?
never been. I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, and North Carolina, and split the difference between the two. I've never been.
Yeah, it's
I heard it's pretty cool. I have eaten a lot of gator growing up, but I just have never been.
Yeah, I haven't been in probably 8 or 9 years. South Carolina did not have an open season for gators for 67 years. From the end of World War II up until about 2008.
Yeah.
So needless to say, we had a gazillion alligators. They were huge, and they did not care about people at all.
Yeah.
And they still only put up for grabs 1,000 tags. So 100,000 alligators, 1%. They put up a lottery system, 1,000 tags, 40% success rate. So we still only took out 400 alligators out of 100,000. So it's very sustainable. But the cool part was the first 2 or 3 years, you talk about some freaking dinosaurs.
Oh, monsters.
And
monsters.
It was just, and they'd never been hunted.
Wow.
So it was like, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
And they're good meat. It's good meat.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the first one.
Cook it right, but.
Yeah. The ones we kill, the first one I killed was 12'4" and weighed over 600 pounds. Oof. A lot of fat on them. I mean, we still ate them, but it was not as optimal. Like I would probably, an 8-footer would be about perfect. But it was cool because you couldn't fish for them because, you know, they do the hooks and the whole deal. Where we had to hunt for them, that was how the
shoot them.
You had to shoot them with something that attaches them to the boat. So you couldn't shoot a rifle. You had to shoot a bow, crossbow, or harpoon.
Wow.
So you got to get in on them. So it was like
harpoon, huh?
Harpoon. So
that's a good reason to buy a harpoon.
That's a wonderful reason to buy a harpoon. So Pops is the only person I know that's ever harpooned one on the first gig. Meaning, so usually we'll shoot them with a crossbow or a bow. We'll put a float on it. So you chase the float down. You work your way, and as soon as you could get it up, you try to build a harpoon with a big rope, and then you can kind of horse them. You can't really horse a 600-pound alligator. You could just keep up with him, and then bang stick him. You know, so it's a pretty big ordeal. And you're doing it at night. Oh, it's wild.
Making me hungry.
It's super fun. But Pops somehow got in on like a 12-footer and harpooned him like the first shot with a harpoon, and like. That is a whole different animal. I could imagine what like the old dudes that were whaling must have felt like. Because when you hit them, I mean, you feel that big. I mean, they're just a giant bicep, right? They're just a giant muscle, and you just feel whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, this thing moves, and it's like that stick is moving. You're like, dude, this is wild. Or they go under the boat, and you hear the scoots go click, 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 like under the aluminum boat.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, these are big. You know, his tail's out that way, his head's out that way. Yeah, and you're just like, this is wild. So it's a fun adventure. You go out at night. You sneak up on them.
A lot of it's done at night, right?
Yeah, because you could use a light. You see their orange eyes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're really tough to get on in daylight. I mean, they kind of know you're there. They're just more open to, you know, now they're so smart. Like, I got a tag for this year, and I'm kind of like, I mean, I'm going to go, but it's like.
It's tough.
It's a tough hunt now because all the big ones are either dead or they all move to the sanctuaries because they're like, we're just like big deer, right?
Yeah.
They get shot up for a while. They're like, anyway, I'm going to the mountains. And the second you hit them with a light, their heads go down. I mean, they've just learned.
They know now.
Whereas the first year, they'd hear the waves on the boat and they would think it's another bull gator coming in, and they'd come to you and they would breathe in, and they'd float up out of the water, and they'd put their tail up, and
you had to pick the litter.
Yeah, and you're like, this is awesome. And they're just these big, just dinosaurs. And it was just super cool, but you know, like anything.
I'm interested in because you're talking about the dinosaurs, and your diet seems to be lean game meat.
Generally, yes.
Let's talk about.
And you're on carnivore now.
I am, and it's look. I've done it all, right?
Sure.
And in the military, I actually used to do a carnivore-ish diet.
Okay.
And I was just in my prime. I mean, I just was really good, but I could get away with a lot. You know, my 20s.
Well, sure.
You know,
you're
6'1".
expending 8 million calories.
Yeah, 225 and burning. I could eat whatever I wanted.
Yeah. And how old are you now?
43.
43. Got it.
I'll be 44 soon. And so what is your physical fitness routine? Because I see you doing a lot of functional fitness and focused on mobility more so than
I used to.
Than you used to.
Yeah.
And then what's your diet like?
Yep. Okay. So I go protein heavy. I kind of like tier it. I have tried intermittent fasting. For me, it does not work well. I have to take on calories, and maybe it's just being a thrower that was.
You got a lot of muscle too. You got to feed that.
Yeah, and that's where I feel. I just don't. My muscles died down, and I. As a thrower that was always undersized, I was used to eating 4 and 5 meals a day.
Yeah. So
like intermittent fasting for me, my body's like, yeah, screw that. That ain't a thing. So get up. I mean, I get up. I'm on thyroid medication, which is great. If you need it, test it, get it done. That changes the game. First thing, water, thyroid. Next thing, I'll go usually anywhere from 4 to 6 eggs, so protein heavy. I'm okay with fat. Protein and fat I'm good with.
Yeah.
Maybe some avocado on top, or, you know, 3/4 of a pound of chicken, or some venison, or just usually always carb and a little bit of fat, coffee, and that's it until 1 o'clock. So I found I could run really good on that. If I take carbs on, I feel pretty good right away, and then I feel like crap.
Same.
Lunch usually double meats and some, you know, chicken, whatever. I'm not as worried about lean. It's just then it goes into, you know, root vegetable carbs, you know, stay away from breads. A little bit of rice is fine. And then in the evening, I'll load it a little bit heavier. But I felt the best, honestly, when I would eat at noon. I'd eat second lunch at 3:30, and then I would eat like a semi-normal-ish dinner. And I would just kind of ramp my carbs up closer to almost like a reverse carb loading, like towards the evening where I'd be more catabolic during the night and be recovery because I would train in the evening.
Yeah, and you burn that at night. You wake up pretty
coming off of training, right?
Yeah.
And I know Rudy Reyes, that he was, I know you know Rudy.
Yeah.
And Rudy was hilarious. Like,
where is Rudy? I haven't seen him.
He's like
forever.
He lives in my hometown now.
What?
Yeah, he lives like 3 miles.
Oh, he married that gal.
Yeah. He and Jade, they live in Lexington.
Yeah,
now.
that's
so
right.
they're always out at the farm and goofing around.
Oh,
and
really
stuff.
cool.
But I think he's like in Libya or something right now. Like he's doing all these shows. Like he's all over the map.
Oh, okay.
With the movies and shows, whatever.
Yeah.
But I learned from him, like he wouldn't eat forever during the day, and then he would eat like a pretty good like regular meal.
Yeah.
And then at night, holy cow, that cat would stay over my house, and he would bomb like entire like Valentine's Day chocolates at like 2 a.m. Like you go up in his room and he had like the little foils would be everywhere, and it was just like, oh my gosh.
And he burned all that up and sleep.
Yeah, and I think it really boiled down to like a reverse carb loading where he would, when he was most anabolic, where he needed to be anabolic, he was ramping up the carbs super high.
Yeah, and that helped his recovery.
And he would help his recovery. And he would get super lean. It was just like, how is that working?
I noticed that too. When I eat late at night, like last night I ate pretty late. I had elk and
not a bad thing.
Elk, a little bit of arugula and some hard cheese.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect meal.
Perfect. Yeah,
really
I was about to say, gosh,
so
it
good.
doesn't get better than that.
And then I did some yogurt before I went to bed.
Like Greek yogurt.
Greek yogurt.
Same.
Couple blueberries.
Dude.
Dude, I woke up and I was like, dang, I'm feeling lean. And I'm like, how the hell does that work?
Dude, that's pretty much what I do. I hammer, the exactly. Greek yogurt,
I love
blueberries,
Greek yogurt,
raspberries. I found strawberries don't work for me well.
Yeah,
gastric. Pineapple, no.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of just boiled down blueberries, blackberries.
What are you doing for veggies? I don't do any veggies besides arugula. I can do arugula, but any other veggies kind of screws me up a little bit.
Really? Yeah. Brussels, a decent amount. Squash.
Oh, Brussels is
green beans.
Yeah, that's some southern stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then some like sweet potatoes or like mixed potatoes. I'm okay with.
Do you have a cheat week? Do you have a cheat day during your week, or a meal where you just eat what you want?
Yeah, I don't watch it super close. I just kind of like just make sure nothing gets out of hand. If it's almost like even the training, I kind of call it like it sounds so stupid, but like if I'm really hitting hard, like life hard, I'm generally my training is and everything is wild, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like I call it the coyote workout where. Like, a coyote will eat as much as he possibly can because he doesn't know when the next meal's coming.
Yeah, feast and famine.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I have today. I'm going to train as much as I possibly can because for the next 3 days, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like for today, like I was up at 3:30 Eastern. I won't train today. I won't train tomorrow. I'm traveling all day Sunday. So I know I got 3 days of I'll get now, if I could sneak a workout in, maybe like if you're like, hey, you want to go train? Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But most likely it's not happening. And one of my best friends and mentor, Derek Woodsky, I asked him, I was like, what do you do when you have to travel for 3 days? He's like, overtrain the few days before so you need the 3 days
to recover.
And I was just like, well, that's so stupid simple.
Yeah.
So I hit it hard like 3 days in a row, which I'll rarely do 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And I just got myself where I feel like crap. And then so I'll need the 3 days of hydration and eating.
Yeah.
So you kind of just game the system a little bit. But like sometimes my food is, again, talking to my son, I asked him one day, I was driving in and I try to like speak pretty transparently and openly and like communicate with him. I was like, hey man, when do you feel most loved from me? And he was like, well, when you tell me you love me. I said, he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, how do you know I love you? He goes, because you tell me all the time. I go, okay, well, I said, then let me think of a different way to put this. I said, what is your favorite time with daddy? I was like, okay.
Good question.
Because that's how he says love, right?
Yeah.
That's how he would think it.
Yeah.
11-year-old doesn't know how you speak love, right?
Yeah.
And he said, when you wrestle with me and when we have donut talks. Wild thing is, we only did donut talks twice.
Interesting.
Totally forgot about it. And what he had a little issue, a little problem. Some kids said something to him in school or like made him feel bad. And he wouldn't talk about it. And finally I was like, hey buddy, grab a donut and I'm gonna grab a donut. Let's go meet in my room. We have a little couch in there. I was like, let's just go talk. And we went in there and we ate our donuts and we talked. And then finally I got it out of him what the issue was. And then like a couple days later, he had something. He's like, "Hey, Daddy, can we grab some donuts?" I'm like, "Go there and talk."
So now he associates
like we could have transparent conversations, and it's only he and I, and this is guy talk, and you can bring up anything you want, but we're going to eat a donut when we do it.
Yeah.
And so like I was thinking about it, I was like, cheat meal goes out of the, if it's donut talk time, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's like, no,
that's
I don't,
the time when to do it.
I don't eat carbs. Like, no, bro. Like,
we
my life isn't so dialed in
same.
that I can't have a donut with my son.
Same.
You know, so that's kind of,
and I'll crush that donut.
I'll crush the donut, and we'll have these like, because you're building core memories, and you're also building like how he views communication with his dad. If I had to eat a cake, like we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. Or if the wife is like, "Hey, will you come down into the dock and watch the sunset and drink a glass of wine with me?" Yes. Yes is the answer.
The answer is always yes.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
My life is not so precision that I will fail to do those things when the opportunities come up.
And so a lot of people have that. They just won't compromise. And it's like,
man,
that's tough.
It's
tough.
It's great if you can. My question is just, what are you giving away?
Yeah, a lot.
What are you giving away? Because really, if I'm making up numbers now, if I'm 12.0% body fat, is that really different than if I was 12.1?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not vain enough to matter. It doesn't matter. No one's paying me to do any of that. Like, I'm not competing.
Yeah. Health and wellness is important, but
I know I generally eat
Yeah.
well. I generally weightlift as much as I can. I do functional movements to try to, I call it, keep the old man away.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be 47 this year. So it's like, how do I do as many things to stay as mobile as possible? Because I had kids later in life, probably like you did.
Yeah.
So I want to die a young man a long time from now.
Yeah,
you know,
same.
And so like I want to do a lot of things with them. I think Huberman said it. No, was it Atia said the other day? It was really interesting. He talked about how you're old or young, and he said old, or he says when you're young is, are you still looking forward to something? And old is you're only looking back of what you did, meaning you're not looking forward to anything more. And that's when you become old.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh,
yeah,
I have all kinds of stuff I want to do.
Yeah.
And so. Cool. I'm just 46 years, whatever you want to call it. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
you'll never be old.
I'll never be old as long as I have dreams and things I want to do. So now the goal is, like, how do I optimize the space I'm taking up right now in life? But then also, I want to go on an elk hunt in the Deseret with my kids in 25 years when I'm 70. Okay, that's a goal. So I need to be functional and able to do it. I want to do all these amazing things for as long as I possibly can. That is the crux of my training and my everything, because again, I feel like in some ways I kind of stole from my kids by having them late. And I don't want to be that dad that at 52, like, oh no, you go do it. Can't do that anymore. And you know, and that I feel like I'll be stealing our relationship in many ways. And it's kind of like what my dad did with me years ago. Like, he never threw the football with me, never threw baseball, all the stuff that a lot of dads do. And at first I was kind of like, what the heck, you know? And then one day he told me, he goes, I take you hunting, I take you fishing, I teach you how to lift weights and camping and survival stuff. He goes, because even if you were really good at baseball or football, you're probably not going to do it a day after you're 18.
Oh,
and he goes,
the real talk.
The real talk. And he goes, and if that's what we build our relationship on, I lose you at 18.
Interesting.
I was like, he goes, but I have
forever.
He goes, I have a hunting partner for the rest of my life. I have a fishing
gosh.
partner for the rest of my life.
That's some good dad
advice.
advice.
He goes, I see you in the gym every day.
Wow.
He goes, I get to have you.
I will never throw a baseball with my child again.
But I'm like, man, you figured that out. He goes, yeah. He goes, I just didn't see how there was a sustainable model for us to build a relationship on something that I'm not doing anymore, and good chance you're not going to do it after 18.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Pretty crazy. And we spend a week together every year still in Missouri hunting together. We'll usually go on another big hunt every year. We talk about it, strategize about it all the time. He'll come to my office. He's like, hey, man, you going to hunt this afternoon? I was like, yeah. He goes, all right, well, come by, swing by my house, pick me up.
Dude, I do not want to lose that with my kids. And so many parents nowadays are like, when you're 18, you're out of the house. It's like, what kind of help? I want my kids there forever.
Right.
Like, why would you want your kids?
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
get that.
It is wild. And so, you know, it's kind of interesting. I read the other day, and again, I'll get the numbers wrong, but it was like, by 10 years old, they said you will have spent 90% of the time you'll ever spend with your kids by the time they're 10.
Wow.
Most people.
That ain't me.
Right? And I thought about it. Well, my mom and dad were divorced. I live with my mom. I've spent 90% of the time with my dad since I was 15.
Yeah.
I see him every day almost.
Wow.
We go on hunts all the time. We lifted. I mean, we've lifted together or beside each other 8 gillion times, you know?
So cool.
And so we've seen each other at our best, at our worst. We've you know, he's helped me drag out $1 zillion. I've done the same for him. I put him in 1 million stands. Like, and I'm like, man, how brilliant was that planning? Brilliant. I mean,
that's the best advice I've ever heard.
Strangely so, right? Like in some ways. Because,
incredible.
You know, and then like he was a big gun collector, so am I. And so now it's like we trade guns back and forth, and we always laugh. We always go, hey, they're yours anyway. Yeah. You know, and he's always like, hey, he's like, you want to trade this for this? He's like, you know, you're getting them all anyway. I was like, yeah, same. If I die, you're getting them all anyway.
Oh,
and like,
that's cool.
And you can use them whenever you want. He's like, all right. He's like, then we'll make a big deal of it. He'll come. He's like, all right, I have a Colt Python. And I'll trade you for blah, 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 blah. And I was like, all right. And I'll come to the office next day and I'll lay it on his desk. And then like, it's just dumb.
So funny.
Yeah, it's just funny.
You can grab it out of his safe anytime.
Anytime I want. Like either way. And he knows, come over and grab it. I was like, here's the safe thing. Come over.
That's
but
so
it's just fun. But like, that was some of those things I was like, okay, that was a really brilliant thing that he did. And so I look at my kids and go, how do we build that like lifelong stuff that is, you know, that they want to come back. I don't care if they get into duck hunting, then we'll duck hunt. I don't care. I don't really care too much about duck hunting. My kids fell in love with it this year.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're going to duck hunt. If that's what'll make you get up early in the morning with me and wear face paint and get muddy and stuff like that, yeah, let's do that.
I'm doing motorcycles with my kids right now, and they love it.
Oh,
so
for sure.
If I could ride bikes with my kids for a long time, that'd be fun.
Right, and you can.
Yeah.
Right? There's no age out of that. And that's where I love like sports. I mean, heck, that's why I make the majority of my money off of sports. But I also see the potential downside of it because, you know, if you're really good, you get to play. If you're good, you get to play till you're 18. If you're really good, you get to play till you're 22. If you're super good, and by the way, that's like out of this much, you get to do it afterwards. And by the way, when you're playing the NFL, your dad ain't. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Derek Wolf retired at 30 years old, and now he's like, I got a whole life to live.
Right. Exactly. Crazy. Yeah. So that was that's just some stuff. I don't know. I know I talked a lot.
No, it's good. We got to go out and see these students, and I want to teach them about struggling well. Let's do a talking with them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
To the rewilding students.
Perfect.
Where can people find all the things that you're doing, and then what services and products do you provide?
Okay, so we build weightlifting equipment. So SORINEX, you can check out on Instagram, SORINEX.com. We do home gyms. We do college football, professional sports, military organizations. We also have SORINEX Outdoors, which is Instagram. We're going to be doing some more programming. We're doing a Shoot to Eat challenge right now. It's going to start August 1st through 15th. The idea is you get up in the morning, you take your bow, or if you have enough of a space to do a rifle, you have a target that starts the first day at a difficult range, and you do a cold bore shot, cold, not warmed up, within the first 10 minutes of you being awake. And if you make the shot, you reward yourself with your breakfast or your next meal, and you post it. And so there's a social pressure.
I'm going to do that.
It's awesome.
When is it? August 1st?
August 1st through 15th.
I'm down.
And I have some special stickers. So if you hit the kill zone, you eat. And if you don't, you starve.
Done.
And so the part
I'm doing that in rewilding with my students.
Perfect. And so
they don't know that, but
so we'll even do some. So the kind of I did it 2 years ago, and it was really interesting because a few days so if you hit, you add a yard the next day. So everything always gets harder.
Start at a yard.
yeah, exactly. But it always gets harder. But what it was teaching me, because back when I was throwing hammer, I don't get a second, but when I was throwing hammer, I had a couple meets that things didn't go well, and the warm-ups and things like that. So when I wasn't prepared, and I had to train myself to be able to go, no, dude, you have to be able to throw a mark to make finals with a 10-minute advance notice. Like, you need to know how to do this crap out of your pocket at any point. So it was set alarms different times of the day. You have 1 hour to get to the track, warm up, do whatever you got to do, and you got to throw far enough to make nationals right now. Because then confidence wise, after a while, you're like, I got that in my pocket any day of the week. So there's the training mindset and there's competition mindset, two different things. So this is more of a competition mindset thing of, I want to know that I can make a hard shot. I could wake up, I could be stiff, I could be tired, I could feel like shit, I could be cold, and I could still pull a 76-pound bow back within 10 minutes of waking up with no nutrition, no warm up, and long bomb a shot, put a kill shot on something every day of the week. Because when I'm sitting in Missouri on day 7 and it's 8 degrees out and I haven't pulled my bow back in 7 days because I've been sitting 14-hour days and a buck of a lifetime walks by, as you well know, the stress inoculation, not only physical, mental, but emotional. I want to know that, no, this is just what I do. I put shots down range. And so, but also know that if I succeed, it just got harder. It'll keep getting harder. And if I fail, I have that reminder of, I have to break my cadence. I don't get to go inside and eat 6 eggs and coffee, and I'm pissed off.
And I need that.
And I need it. And so now it pays to be a winner, right? And now I get to go home and be mad. And I did it 2 years ago, and I missed 2 shots in about 30 days. And you talk about pissed off. Because as I saw it, I go, you're such a beep that you couldn't focus for 10 seconds. You had only one job, was to focus and hold that focus and get the job done. You had all the time in the world to do it, but you couldn't hold it together for 10 seconds. You have to be better than that. You cannot lose focus on this. This is that important. And I remember the shot, I broke it. I was like, here, 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 here. And I was like, got it. And right as the pin started moving off, I was like, no, I think I still got it. And I just shot and I go, you dumbass. You know you didn't have it and you just shot it anyway. You shanked it. And I was like, no, you should have restarted it. You should have done your shot process. But I was rewarded by not eating, and it was on Instagram Live, so everyone got to see me miss. And then so there's the social, like, hey, you suck. And then the rest of the day, your body chemistry's a little off, your tempo's off.
You're not optimal.
You're not optimal. But you talk about that evening's training, holy crap, there was some focus there. And that next morning, I was like the Terminator. I woke up, I was like, boom, and it was like laser focus. I walked up, I was like, bah! And just, and then
drink this coffee.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like, oh, wow, like things just got real. And so like, that was the thing I experienced was like, oh, you kind of want to taste some blood in your mouth every once in a while and go, I just got my ass kicked.
August 1st through 15th.
1st through 15th, Shoot to Eat Challenge. So what we're doing is, so people post it, tag Shoot to Eat, do this, tag SORINEX Outdoors, and we're giving away, we partnered with Clean Eats, which is a franchise company. They send pre-made healthy meals. So they're going to do 30 meals, 30 breakfast meals to the, like, whoever they pick as the winner of, like.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so if again, pays to be a winner. You do a really good job, you hit some good shots, you do some good content.
It's 30 days or 15?
It's 15 days, but they'll give you 30 days of meals. Sent to you. So it's kind of cool.
That's really
cool. And
the
idea is just get people focus every day. You've got to be tested every day. Are you doing it or are you not? Don't miss any days. And just pull your shit together for one shot.
I love it, man.
And if you fail, that's a really good message. And if you made it, it's going to get harder tomorrow.
I love that. SORINEX.com?
SORINEX.com is the website. SORINEX on Instagram, SORINEX Outdoors on Instagram, Bert Sorin, BERTSORIN on Instagram. I'm on Facebook too, but I don't, that's like for people in my high school checking on me. My mom.
We'll make sure we hide that link down below. All right, Bert, thanks for being on the podcast.
Brother. Thank you for having me, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for everything.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.